So what's up again, and we're back with our animate guardian, animate weapon setup. Unfortunately, we're still not able to defeat Sirius for the second time, and oh, okay, hang on. The last time that I encountered Sirius was that he was almost dying. It's like he only had a hair-like life bar, and then suddenly he one-shotted my animated guardian. So that if you know, this setup is solely based on being the animated guardian should be alive all the time, so that I'll be able to summon his weapon. And then suddenly Sears one-shotted him, not me. So I've got 3 remaining portals at that time, and then since I don't have the gears for the animated guardian anymore, I wasn't able to defeat him. It was so unfortunate. And right now, we are trying to do mapping again. Although I don't think there's been any changes with the damage that we're doing. Right now, I do not know of anything, or what else should I do so that I'll be able to bump the damage with my animated minions. So about this megalomaniac medium cluster jewel, it has called to the slaughter, first among equals, and surging vitality for my survival. And this one, I was hoping if this will bump up my malevolence aura. And also our defense for the 20% increased duration. And yeah, I'm trying to secure myself a wow, what jewel is that? A voice is large cluster jewel, so that I'll be able to triple this call to slaughter maybe sometime. I still got large jewel socket near to my nodes that I can probably allocate soon if ever I get the voices large cluster jewel. And since that, again, for almost a month now, been running the Uber lab, and we were still not able to get the animated weapon enchantment, but rather we got this clarity has 30% reduced mana reservation. And so yeah, instead of using the aspect of the spider, since yesterday I was this enchantment was supposed to be Storm Blast will detonate lingering blades within 75 area, but I was trying to synergize the Storm Blast with ethereal knives or the blade fall, but I wasn't really feeling that build, because every time I stop in the middle of the mobs, then I'll die. And as you know, blade fall, you need to stop and then cast, and then stop, and then cast, and then I mean, it doesn't really proc the blade blast that much. That's why, although I was kind of feeling that it's I'm probably I'm missing something on that build, because I suck at the blade blast in my one instead. So every time it will just trigger a sucketed spell, so that it will just auto trigger the blade blast. But for some reason it doesn't really trigger that much. I mean, it just triggered the blade blast for like fair minimal. So didn't really like that build. So I did somehow suck at the blade blast with bladeful in these gloves right here, and I also used spell echo and faster casting, if I remember it. It was kind of fun, but unfortunately I'm gonna lose some of my survivability skills as well. Just like this elemental. No, no. I think it was the grace or precision. Yeah, clarity. I don't have the clarity yet. I'm gonna lose the convocation and something else. So when I ran the Uber Lab again last night, I was able to get this enchantment here. Clarity has 30% reduced mana reservation. So I then decided to go back to my build, which is the StormBind. But right now I instead equipped with the increased area of effect, so that the squares will be much bigger. If you can see it, I'm trying to buy gloves or boots that has an influence with spell echo and increased area of effect, so that StormBind I can cast this faster and just run away. And right now, since we have this enchantment, we did use clarity instead, rather than the aspect of the spider, because this seems I don't think this is really working, because I was using this with the bladeful and blade blast, but it seems that the mobs are still getting towards my character very easily, and I don't see any spider webs. So I don't know how this really works, and I think I'm probably gonna sell this. I bought this for like 5 exiles just for that aspect of the spider skill. Yeah, it doesn't really work that well. So yeah, I was thinking that Blade Blast and Bladeful will make it out with this skill, because at least I have a skill that will auto cast and make the mobs moves slower because of the aspect of the spider. But instead it didn't work out. So we're back to our StormBind. If you know StormBind, as long as I deploy these plates right here, it'll gonna hinder all the enemies, all the mobs on top of it. So that will give me time to move around, and that will also give time for my animated weapon to deal more damage. And yeah, so yeah, and I also tried to recraft this convoking one here. Unfortunately, it failed. I thought that, I've wasted 12 exiles just for these and for these. I was trying to craft the two of these, and unfortunately, I wasn't really aware of that. Even if I can have this one, even if I craft these modifiers here in this one, wasn't reading anything with regards to crafting, so I've removed the original crafted modifier here and replace it with this one. And then when I replace this, it shocked me that I can no longer add anything on it since it's already full. Okay, it's just what was that again? Temp jeweled foil. I think this one. Woo. Woo bite, okay. Alright, so where were we? So yeah, I tried to craft with this one with can have 3 crafted modifiers, and to my surprise I can no longer add anything on it because it's already full. And I tried to annul something from here, and I forgot what went missing. And then I slam 2 X-Salts on it, which added this useless 16% increased cold damage. And the next one was I think it's the 15% increased spell damage, which I think it's a little bit useful, but I'm not really feeling it. I would rather hope it was minion skill. And then so I wasn't, since it was so late at night, so I was trying to recraft this as well. This is supposed to have chaos resistance and life, maximum life on it already, but then when I annul it, it then removes the maximum life on it, and then when I annul it again, it removes the chaos resistance again. And yeah, because I was trying to add, I can have at least 3 crafted modifiers in this helm, and it wasn't really working because it's already full, and that's all unfortunate. I would wanna annul one more thing. It's probably the 28% increased burning damage, but since I'm not really that lucky, and I've already wasted 12 X-Salts that time, so I just leave it and just crafted 70% maximum life on it, which in turn, my build that time was really broken because I didn't have the resistance anymore, so I had to change my gloves again. Instead of using these, tried grip for the maximum damage, optimal damage. I had no choice but to equip these gloves again, just for me to have a little bit of the fire resistance, because as you know, these doesn't have any resistance on it, rather other than the increased armor and energy shield. And luckily somebody gave us this, where was it? This one, these gloves. It's got cursed enemies with level 12 temporal chains on it. And I was really surprised when I was supposed to buy it from him, and then he told me that I can have it for free. Yeah, it was so nice. Oh, I'm trying to, as you can see, if I remove this, my resistance will be that low, and my HP will, oh, that's fine. Let's see if I can use this again without having my resistance going very low. And we're gonna see, it's not really that high. Lightning and chaos. So that's really my problem. So probably I'm just gonna replace this with something still on and set ring with a couple of resistance on it, rather than the aspect of the spider skill. It's not really that useful to me right now, but probably just gonna look for it once we get the currency that we can use for it. So at the moment this isn't really looking good. But yeah, we can try at lightning. I think I have a gem that will probably, yeah, okay, yeah, I think I've replaced it with this one just for the sake of the HP. Fire and lightning, this got only 10 on it. I think we still got we can probably squeeze in chaos resistance on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh man, so hard to. I wish I. Oh yeah, we can probably use this. We can probably look for maybe a jewel that has these notable skills here, but with the jewel socket that we can use for our gems. I'm not sure, where did I put it? I think I have some, probably just put it somewhere here. That's the thing with, you just continue mapping and you don't really care about them loots. This is what happens. I don't really know where did I put it. Fire resistance. I think this is the one. Yeah. Still got minion damage in it. So probably if we can use this, yeah, then we can use these gloves. Didn't realize I have. Oh man, I badly need this jewel because of the chance to taunt on hit with attacks. That is pretty much, that is really useful for minion build. So right now I can't really replace this because of the chaos resistance. And this one probably let's just try this one first. Unfortunately our HP is just 5k. What's the difference? 5-1. But I think it's lightning, and this one doesn't have anything on it. Oh, okay, then. Yeah, we can probably try this. Loads, and we'll just put it there. Blade fall. I really wanted precision and haste. Oh man. No, yeah, that's fine. So let's find map. Okay. Let's try this T16 if we can survive as much as possible. We don't want maps that has reduced flask charges or HP regen. We don't want that. And I can probably take reflect damage because I've tried it sometime. But right now I'm just really very careful with my animated Guardian already. So I think that's fine. Cursed with vulnerability, I think that's fine as well. But don't really know. Alright, let's just put one of it. And let's take Zana with us. And of course we can... Nah. Hopefully Zana will give us a good map. Let's pop our ones.
You've already done this before. You are caught in a loop.
Oh man, I really hate this map. Can't run freely. So where do we go? Here. Let's remove it.
Nothing more to give.
There's the boss. Doing fine. Just bring it on. Too laggy. Oh, that was almost. Oh, damn it. That was unfortunate. This league is very weird in the sense that no matter how you bump your resistance and your defense, you're not gonna get killed by the boss or the higher mobs. You're gonna get killed by these normal mobs instead. You'll be surprised. Let's just loot this one later. He's running away. We're not really gonna detonate the plates because we just wanted the plates to be there just for the sake that we can slow the enemy down, the mobs down. And detonating it doesn't really do that damage at all.
I have nothing more to give.
I'm just gonna pop up that door. Need that.
That felt disturbingly good.
I think I'm not really doing that much damage yet. Let's say the best of defense is your offense. So if I ever able to bump the damage, I would probably clean the mobs really easily and not dying at just these normal mobs. Oh, we haven't really done the Zana yet. Yeah. Just gonna do the... Where is it? Here. Oh, I think this is hard. We'll get one-shotted by this guy. Was almost. Oh, that was a bone helmet. Ooh la la. I think it's a higher level. That's why it was highlighted in the filter, loot filter. But we don't really need it at the moment because we needed the bone helmet with the enchantment already. And I've been running Uber Lab for the whole month. I think. And still wasn't able to get the Animate weapon enchantment. And I thought that there was still an Animate weapon deal 40% damage, but I think they removed it for this league. That was so annoying. Oh, this one's nice. Ignite. Anyway, let's just loot that later. We still get Zana. Just in the other side.
Still sane, exile.
So we're just gonna throw this one. The Israel in 85. Yeah. we're just gonna throw them all away just right here before going inside Xana's map. Unfortunately, I'm not solving that.
I need your help checking and
Ooh la la, that's nice. Unfortunately, it's just a blue map, but that's fine because it's influence, so we can probably get something out of it.
in this map, and I think we'd be fools to leave it unchecked.
They are watching you from beyond this world. Can you feel them?
I've already tried this build with a simulacrum, and I was able to survive up until
Nothing more to give.
that was almost up until wave 19, and then wave 20 was pure stun. Wasn't really able to move. That's why. It's not here. Let's loot that later, of course. Where is it going?
Light is trying to spread. Put out you mycelium. New roots. Divine power. The light is trying to spread.
Oh crap! There's still here. Seriously, we got another one.
Let's see what this power can really do.
Gonna hold it. Hold it. Did we? Yeah, we did. I'm not selling it. So that was all of it. We've got lots of loot to come back here. We haven't killed the boss yet. This is the most annoying thing when you have a duration skill with you, because you just have to wait, hoping that your skill will not despawn. Almost.
I have nothing.
Oh man, why? Really hate that when that happens. You're just stuck. It's in like something. You can't move. We unload these stash here while we're out here. Because we know that there are lots of loose inside. Yep. Pop them worms. Ooh, what happened? Oh, okay. Didn't see that. Very good. What the heck? That is so annoying. Wait, we're just gonna have to collect the loots first. That's annoying. That was so annoying. You might get something out of it before we use all the portals. And hopefully it's got something nice. Oh crap. That was all of it. I keep collecting these scrolls just in case I needed a currency. You can convert these to chaos. Hmm? Oh. What the heck? I forgot again to swap weapons. So again, we're going to go back. Oh, just have to click this one here. What's this? We don't like that. Before we run out of portal, we just make sure to collect all these. So yeah, we're gonna have to go back to that annoying thing. Give us 14. What the heck? Why only 10? I needed 14, bro. Whatever.
I have nothing more to give.
What is that? Am I bleeding? What the heck was that? It's the most annoying thing in this game. We still have a portal. We still got 2. Seriously, we only got 6. I think we can kill him. Oof. Anyway. That thing was so annoying. So yeah, we were able to kill it, but it it also took all our XP. That's why before this game, I was not really going difficult maps, higher tier maps, because I had like 80% of XP bar already, because I went delving, and I didn't want the XP to be wasted, so I just bought some maps that has 100% XP on it, like the Pillars of Arum, if I remember. Up until I made my character to level 92. It's kind of pretty hard. Still got 10 more monsters left. You don't want your hard-earned XP to just be blown away by mobs like that. Yeah, I think that was all of it. And now, so, yeah. What's this bow? How much are we gonna sell it? It costs 10. We just wasted our XP for a 10 chaos orb bow, but I think we get a better one. This one. I think this cost like 20 plus. Oh, it's 40. Oh yeah, that's really worth it. So yeah, at least the XP wasn't wasted because of that loot.
Far too much baggage.
Kind of full. Okay, we're just gonna do the stash.
Hello.
I broke it. What happened?
That boots is really nice to look. That's really nice looking boots.
Daddy, I broke it.
What do you mean you broke it?
Daddy.
You broke the game?
No. Once I pressed W, down, I couldn't even walk.
What? You can try to restart it.
The laptop?
Yeah.
No. No.
Why? You lose everything?
No. I need these again.
I'm just gonna dump it here.
Okay.
This one.
We're coming back again.
That's a high level
Okay. There we go.
bone helmet right there. Just gonna dump it.
This glitch, Daddy. This is such a glitch.
Ooh. So it's glitching right now.
Yeah.
That is why. Yeah, I think we're dealing more damage with these globs right here. Although our resistance is really that low. It's not bad. It's just that the chaos resistance is low. It's negative again. Probably just gonna look for something. I'm thinking of getting myself a Watcher's Eye prismatic with chaos damage, 50% chaos damage reduction while affected with purity of elements, I think, if I remember it correctly. But it's just, we just don't have the currency at the moment yet. I'm just probably gonna lose the facing while affected with haste and just get that prismatic instead. I mean, Watcher's Eye instead.
Far too much baggage.
Okay. I need to get in. Daddy, take a look.
Mm-hmm.
Take a look.
Oh, yeah, I can see it.
Daddy, take a look. It turns.
Yeah.
Daddy, look.
Yeah, I can see it from here. So it's already fixed?
Huh?
It's already fixed?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. How much are we? How much is this? Is it really worth it? One chaos. This sells for 1 chaos. 100. Oh, that's nice. 26, 33, 1. We're just gonna bring it. We still got some. Just gonna sell it for 1 chaos. How about 2? How much is this? Yeah. Oh, this 2 chaos? How? What's going on with this helmet? Why does it cost 2k? Oh, okay. It's... Yeah, of course. We don't have those stats.
Hello.
Ooh. 60 life and 16 elemental. That's nice.
How does for wheel?
Wheel?
Yeah.
W-H
What's next?
E-E-L. Too bad it doesn't have HP. It's got a really nice golden fire. Just gonna keep it. Doesn't have HP as well. Yeah, we're just gonna keep that. I'm keeping all these jewels. Let's see how much we can sell it. Seriously, 1 chaos. That is weird. It's just 1 chaos. Should be somewhere around, yeah, 2 chaos or something. So since it's just should be around 5. It's the price of 5 chaos at the moment. We'll just change that later. This one, how much? Oh, okay. This one. I really hope that they're gonna improve the auction house. You don't have to do those things. You just have to click and buy, and then it's gonna go to your inventory. Because it's really annoying when you're trying to solve something like 1 chaos, and then you're in the middle of the mapping.
Hello.
Going up and set for fabrication or something. Golden blue. I think this one? Oh. Yeah. I knew it's gonna get sold easily. I might have priced it really low. That's why. That's fine. Scorch, I'm not selling it. Still got 3 more. We still got 3 more portals. Do we still have anything here? Marake. Too bad it's not Link. That's a 1 chaos. Still got 15 monsters left. I'm not sure where they are. They're not here. Okay, so they're just probably just around the other side. This is oh, we still got some looting to do here. Yeah, we still got lots of loots here.
Far too much baggage.
Far too much baggage. What's this? No. What was that? More. Just somewhere.
Far too much baggage.
Do we really need to find those 11 monsters yet? Oh. Yeah, just probably around here. It's not here. Nah.
Let me tell you.
Too bad it's just only 1 resistance right there, but that's good. Oh, there's a chaos. That's nice. So it's just a 15 chaos. Alright, we're just gonna sell it for 5. Somebody will take it. Oh, okay. We're just gonna have to put it right here. So yeah, that's pretty much. Our chaos resistance is so low. So we don't have. Okay, let's. How about we find something that would. Where is it? Yeah, this is the one that I was trying to. I was trying to craft something this morning. Maybe we can search for a ring that has better stats rather than... We needed a socket. It should have... well, first thing is it should have minion increased damage. I know this is kind of really expensive ring. 35, 100 chaos is fine. It's just that it doesn't have the... What do we have here? Should have HP. Mana regen? No, we don't really need mana regen because we have clarity on it. So we can probably add HP on it. Yeah. Life. It should be around how about 100? That's I think that's too much. About 90. Oh yeah, this is nice. It's an 11 exalt. We only have 3 exalts to spare. How about we can go lower? 80. So the lowest is 11 exalt. That's huge. Hang on.
Can I have some? I want some. Huh? Huh? This one? Let's just drink it. It tastes like almost beer.
So the lowest is 11 exalt. Oh crap. How about 70? What the heck? How come it's too much already? Look, I was able to get these rings for around 3x 3EX, and right now how come it's already... Okay, hang on. 7, yeah, I was able to get this for 1EX, and this one is for, I think I was able to get this for 5EX. That is so annoying. Oh, it's the help. What? Really? Is there anything that we filtered something? Clear. One. Minion deal increased damage. Should be 35. Oh. There's 100 chaos. It's just that it doesn't have HP in it. Oh yeah, we can probably craft the HP. We can probably get something that has chaos resistance. That's too much. Maybe we can find something that has influence in it. Yeah, this one. No. Any. Oh, that's. Oh man. Oh, that's too much. That's just too much. What are they? Oh my. The thing is, if I lose them, we can probably take this one off, and without the socket, and use this one. Yeah, still got 60 exalts. That is so weird. This is the most annoying thing with this build, because you don't really have that much of choices. So since this build is really nerfed, you get stuck with the choice that you'll see in the market. Oh man, that's 30 exalts. Even just it doesn't have the sockets, but it's still 30 exalts. That's kind of annoying. How about if we don't have socket? Live. Do we get something around 90? It's already 3 exalts. But this one's nice because it's got fire resistance and the old resistance in it. So I think 3 exalts is worth it. Look at that. Yeah, that is so increased energy shield. Oh man. But I really wanted to keep this set up right here. So I really needed a ring that has sockets. Does have a socket in it. And it's just that I don't have 11 exalt at the moment, so yeah. We can probably lower down the minion damage. Maybe it's around 30. 3 exalts. Oh man. 6 exalts. I think I'll just keep this one at the moment, but we're just gonna have to find a convoking one instead. Convoking one. Yeah. Oh. This one. Oh man. Oh, of course. What we needed is we needed as much minion damage. Really? So 69? Increase area of effect. We already got 63% increased damage, so this is not really an upgrade. We kind of want something that's around 90 already. So we can find something right here. Where's the minion damage? Okay. It's only 49. So how about here? This got a little bit of damage on it, but I doubt that he's selling it. Auras from your skills grant 2% increased damage to you. Oh, this one's nice. Oh, it's this one's really nice. This is the one that we needed, but it's just that it's not probably selling it. Can have up to spell gems. Oh crap! Look at those. I was trying to grab like this one. I wasn't really that lucky. 30 chaos. It's just at 40. Oh. How about we can here? 2 chaos. 81 with 1 exalt, which doesn't have really that. 76. This one's nice. 2 exalt. Faster. Oh man, that's too much. Faster cast. Oh, this one's not. This one's nice. 1 exalt with the faster casting. I really hope this was spell echo. This would be really great. It's just that it's 58%. And I doubt that we can still add more modifier here, because it's already been, I think it's already full. So we might probably annul one of these. We don't have, I mean, yeah, it's too bad. This one's me. Spell cascade. So just gonna add spell echo. It's a great spell echo. What the heck? Oh, it's just too chaos. It's just that the minion damage is too small, too low. If we can just 68, 63. I really wanted to slam this with an exalt. Oh man, that is too small. That is too low. But this one's nice. It's 83. What was the gobble? Of course. Oh, that's too chaos, bro. Oh. Alright. So where was we again? This one randomizes the numeric values of our. So we can probably divide it. Randomizes the numeric values of the random modifiers of on an item. Unique. I didn't realize we can. So if we ever, where is it? If we ever buy this one. Oh, that's this one's nice already, because it's got 40 in it. Probably if we can randomize this. I'm not really sure if we ever get to have higher tier on this one. That's because that's an 80 chaos. $60. That's just I think we can't craft additional trigger with this one because it's really full. But yeah, I think we needed to annul one of these inside of this one of these two here, but not really sure if I'm that lucky. So yeah, so that was the highest, I guess. Yeah, we can't. This is the highest. That's just annoying. That's just annoying. How about we can? I don't really think that I don't really think we have much choice with these one. Yeah, haste, purity filaments, all the balloons. I think we were able to level our power. Oh, the empower gem is already full. Generosity is already full. Enlighten, and I forgot to put these two with. Do we have? It's gotta be 100 so that it'll level up easily. If we
Welcome.
saw the enlighten. No.
I will see you again.
Do we have an enlightened gem with? Oh no. What's this? Empower. It's just 2 chaos, but level 3 max. Level 3. So, seriously, it's just 2. It's just 4 chaos. About 4? Oh, there goes the. So we needed to. Is there a 6? No, 5. No, so. War and quality 23. Is there a quality 23 for this one? No. How about 20? Okay. If I can't sell this gem, how do I add? Empower. Power gem recipe. Is there a recipe for it? How do you get this to get plus 20? Quality. Like most items, gems can be corrupted using Val orbs. Corruption in gems can potentially lift the level of quality percentage of a gem above maximum 20. Do I just slam gem counters prism on it? Because
Hello.
it's not recognizing it. Quality 20. These guys are doing the challenge. That's why. Happened to me last league as well. Didn't realize that. Oh, what? Oh, whatever. No, we didn't want the this one. We needed the chaos. These gems are already golded 20, so we're just gonna put it there and level that one up. Generosity. I'm tempting to add. Ah, yeah, let's just slam it there. And we're gonna slam a chaos on it. I mean a ball on it. Boom. Oh crap. Didn't. It didn't. It's just 4 chaos. Damn it. Didn't have luck on it. So we're just gonna sell it for 5 chaos. I really need to clean these tabs. Do we have another empower gem that we can level? What's this gem? Vitality. Inspiration. Berserk. We don't have any gems. How much of it selling this? 5 chaos. We need to put something on it. Name or ban. Vitality. Purity. No. Herald of Ash. Purity. Pride. Punishment. We can just level this main. How much is a main? I don't think this. Oh, so if we have 21, 23, how much is it? 21. That's a 2x. So yeah, I'm gonna level it. So again, back to our. So far we got 3 EX 530 chaos, and we're looking for something that will be useful for our build. Again, what was convoking one with minion damage and spell echo. I don't really know if I can roll this one up. So the highest is 60. It's just that we don't. Increase gas speed. 60. We could probably not really know. I don't really think we can still add. This guy's selling it for 5 EX just for this. 85, 81. Not really good at crafter. This one's 2 EX, Paleco and Onslaught. And the minion damage is just too low. It's the highest minion damage that is available in the market. It's a 12x or 92. Yeah, this is. Oh, this one's nice. Exalts, and that's crazy. I don't think we can upgrade it this time. It's not really that great. Guy right here, it's 80 chaos. Yeah, we don't really want to craft it ourselves because based on our experience, we're not really that lucky crafter. So we're probably just gonna waste more currency rather than. Oh, this one's nice. I'm so excuse that kid. That's that 9x alto. We don't have that currency. Please, that's not too much. You're so noisy. Which one? Somebody's buying our Empower for 5 chaos. Where did they put it? It's in a weapon tab 1. In fact, we have these ones that we wanted to craft. And this one's got spell echo and area effect, but I just don't really know how to craft or add minion damage on it. Maybe if we can annul it or something Do we annul it? That was so unfortunate. Oh, that was amazing. It annulled everything that we wanted. And it gave us onslaught. And it made it useless. Oh yeah. Yeah, we're not gonna waste that. Where's our... The reason why I wanted a spell like Onet is because I wanted the Sakata gem to cast one more time. This one's really nice to have. It's just that I don't really know how to grab. If ever I grab something. That's too low. Well, that one is nice, but it's the minion damage is just too low. That minion damage is only 9. To exalt. Why is he adding 13 to 5 damage? Wish it could be something like something for the minions instead. That's just out of place. Cast speed. So yeah, lesson learned. Really don't need to craft it myself. Cause it's not gonna do a good thing. I'm just gonna waste currency on it. Cause I'll probably just keep slamming chaos or something. So we'll just probably just look something from the market rather than crafting it ourselves. I mean, don't get me wrong, I really love crafting, that's why I totally wasted 12 exalt just for nothing. Right, so we're back. 77. Oh man, that's too much. How about if we're just gonna buy resonator instead? This one? And we're just gonna try slamming that. Do we have the bound fossil? Unfortunately, we don't have the bound fossil, so we're not gonna get a minion. We're just gonna get a bound fossil first. If they're just gonna fix these marketplace, where if you click on it and then you have enough currency, it'll just go directly into your inventory, rather than you're trying to PM someone that is already in the doing the mapping. It's so annoying. Hang on. This guy's got 12, but how much is this selling it? It's 10.
Okay.
I think he's only got one. So again, we're gonna waste 10 chaos. Oh, we forgot to buy.
Wait.
The resonator.
Oh, that's capital. It definitely works!
What the heck? Innocence wings. Ooh, it's 235. No, we don't need that.
Oh, my
Why am I looking at it? Resonator.
No! I...
It's not really replying. So I'm just gonna go for the 18. I don't think that is a legit. Oh, we're only gonna buy up to 20. And they're not replying. Oh, someone's selling it for
Now it's a great.
15. We're not gonna. That's already 24. I think we still have the other resonator, which is the chaos. Resonator. Prime chaotic. I think this is the.
What? How did it get bigger?
Yeah, we're just gonna take this one.
That's literally.
Yeah,
Armor.
20. So this is it. I think if I remember it correctly, we needed a bound fossil. Yeah, the bound fossil, the metallic, and this one. One of these, and corroded and shuddering. Hang on. We're still gonna need one more bound fossil. So we're back again, and if we can view. So we're back, and we're gonna check. This one is level 84, and we are going to use corroded, bound, shuddering, and if I remember correctly, it's the metallic. So once chaos multiplier, spell damage. We wanted to get this. Oh, where is it? So this one. Where is the minion damage? Incursion. So where is the minion damage? Can't seem to find the minion damage.
Can I cheat
Here. This one. Increase mine. Incursion prefix. So yeah, we are gonna need bound fossil, one metallic, one bound, one corroded, and corroded, one metallic, one shuddering. I think we still got lots of shuddering. Oof, we don't have shuddering anymore. Ah, that's labyrinth. Where did we put the shuddering? I thought that we still got lots of shuddering. Thought we only used all the bound fossil, but seriously, we don't have shuddering anymore. Yeah, it seems that we ran out of shuddering as well, and we're gonna buy shuddering. Shuddering fossil. Oh, it's not that expensive, so I'm not really sure if he's gonna reply. Find chaos. We're just gonna look for someone that has yeah, this one too.
Yay! Finally made it. Wow. No. I'm making this. No.
They're not replying. Probably they're inside the map. Just gonna buy this one. We don't really know what we're doing right now, but yeah, we're just kind of hoping we'll get lucky. And no one is replying. Alex DJ. Where is he? How much is he selling? Six. So yeah, and the moment of truth. One metallic, one shuddering, one bound, one, what's this? Corroded, and one shuddering. This one is from a normal, and this one is rare, so we're gonna have to scar this little guy here. So let's just check if we're gonna be able to do that on a 7 to 6. So right, 76. We're still gonna get something. Yes, got the gems. Spell socket. No. Yeah, we're still gonna get the spell echo and where is it? This one, so yeah. 7. This one is the level 70. Oh, 77. Spell echo. Yeah. So we're gonna scar this one. And boom. Oh fudge. We're not lucky. We're not lucky. We're not the lucky guy. Normal item. Just gonna... Oh, where is it? We still got one bond fossil. And normal to rare, so we're gonna have to scour this again. That pretty much turns better. Increase critical damage. Unfortunately, minion damage is not that great. Gonna have to scour this again. And more lightning. Just nope. How about this one? No, we're not lucky. As I've told you, we are not really a good crafter. We're not lucky crafter.
Georgie Piggy.
This turns well. This turns out to be good, but still, we didn't have the right enchantment, so I just get something that has the enchantment on it. Animate weapon. This one.
It's a different siren head.
Minion life, minion damage, block, minion increased,
That's okay.
have 23 increased maximum life. 25 increased damage, yeah, we needed a increased 25 increased damage. Lightning resistance.
No, you didn't save me.
Although this kind of level of socketed minion gems. Yeah, unfortunately it's the level of socketed minion gems. We really wanted all minion gems. But anyway. So we're just gonna...
Oh my god, the back! I'm back!
we're just gonna do the mapping again. We're not lucky.
Okay, never go.
How much currency do we have? 400. That's fine. New Vestir. Temporal train. Lightning damage. That's fine.
Why haven't you siren head? Uh-oh.
Additional breach and strong boxes. Tormented spirits. Oh. Not really sure what's this. Yeah, we're just gonna try that. I haven't
That
really
is so weird.
tried this map yet, but
Get in the basement.
So I don't know what will happen. I hope our enemy guardian will not die. Oh, okay.
I have nothing more to give.
I don't know what's gonna happen. I think that we're lacking damage, really.
How did the door open? Okay. No. Oh my god! How did it open? What the fuck?
We're kinda dead.
The door is open. How did the door open? What the fuck is the door open? The door opened right there. What the heck? No.
I don't really know what's going on. Oh man, I don't really know what's going on. Prince! I don't really know what's going on there. What the heck? So what? How are we going to kill it? That's almost. That's almost. Still got one more.
Okay, listen.
I have nothing more to give.
Oh, I don't really know how to. We still got one more. Ah, it's just that I don't have the desecrate. That is why. Kill it! Kill it! Kill it! You're almost there.
Flee exile, quickly!
Get it, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it.
What the heck? No. Why did I do that?
That was the Elder. What terrible, monstrous power. We must...
Why? Damn it. Oh, okay. Okay, that's nice. We're just gonna need this one. Eradication. Fragment. Ah, that was stupid. Why did I do that? Fragment.
No, no, it's coming! The thing is coming!
Which fragment is it? Fragment of constriction, eradication.
Daddy, I saw something right there and it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back in the basement. He is coming.
Eradication and this kind of.
No! It's gone. I can't hear it. I can't.
Desecrate.
I think it's gone.
Excuse me.
No, 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 no! I think it's gone.
That's the beauty if you don't know and what will happen. Where's my desecrate? Oh, this one. The problem is
Hey. No, no!
where should I put it?
That thing. Daddy, where did it go? Where did it go?
Okay, so we're gonna buy. We're gonna buy it.
It's really gone. Daddy,
Yeah.
Daddy, that thing I saw before, it was coming, but it's gone. Where did it go?
I don't know.
Oh my God. Where?
Prince. Uh-huh. We're just gonna waste
And it's gone.
another 35 chaos. I don't really know how much is the other one. Seems that they're not selling it.
Oh my gosh, we're so far in the basement. We need to go back to the basement because we don't need to be lost. We need to get in the basement. We need to get in the basement because I hear sounds! I hear sounds! I hear sounds!
1, 2, 3.
I hear it like rip, 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 rip.
Hey, Prince, come on, please.
God, I hear that sound. I hear that. Looks like rip, 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 rip. Don't go there. Don't go there. It's all red eyes.
So we need the fragment. Eradication, I guess? No.
Oh my god!
Enslavement?
Freak me out!
Yeah.
I hear it
No, this one's...
flapping like a bird.
No, it's not. I thought it was cheaper.
By the basement door.
It's fine.
I thought it was a monster sound. Don't shut the door, you stupid! You cleaned me out! Stop! Stop!
Rusty pipe.
Stop!
Work it to chaos.
Stop, you stop. Get it! Get it! Get it! Get it! What have you done? Why did
So again, we're just gonna
doors?
go back there again.
No! 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 Jason! What have you done? Lights off.
Yeah, I think we have...
Shut the door. No one's coming. No one's coming.
I have nothing more to give.
don't really know where to hide. Absence of meaning.
That's so crazy. Don't shut that. Let that in. It's going.
ついとるやつね。だけど、全然いける。全然いけた。これタコや。タコタコ。予習してたからね。さすがエルダ。
Oh no!
この後スラム。全然いけた。
Nope. You hit it. Stop. How can I take that? Nope, 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 no, guys, so it's... I can't see.
ついとるやつね。
What is this? What
だ
is
けど、全然いけた。全然いけた。
Am I in jail?
これタコや。タコタコ。予習してたからね。
I got the lantern.
さすがエルダ。
Lights off.
この後スラム。いた。オッケー。で全然大丈夫だったな。ここまでは。もういけんちゃうか。めっちゃドキドキしてるけど。
can't do this just yet.
Kenapa patah deh? Mata. Drama.
That is not right. That's silent.
え、こんなんあり。危な。
Monster.
ベルト。
Okay.
Dad told me I am back. No, wait, check outside. Check out. Take a picture. Take a picture outside. You have a picture. Take a picture of those monsters. Take a picture.
I have nothing more to give.
Okay, what's that done? Where is the poopy cat? Where is the poopy cat? Where is
Come on, we're gonna.
the poopy cat? Where is the Where is the Check outside. Take a picture. Take a picture. Take a picture. Infuse out later. Oh! How dare you! You confused me! No! I lost this. What?
Busog na ko. That's almost.
This is where it. The basement. The basement. The basement.
exile, quickly!
Ooh.
So that was the Elder. What terrible, monstrous power. We must find a way to defeat it, Exile.
No, I didn't get
We
them.
seem to have driven it from this world.
Didn't get the
There
gloves.
must be a way to defeat
There was
it
a
for
gloves. This I know I can defeat it already.
Let me tell you.
I knew I can defeat it. So what do we have? Is it worth it? I don't think it's worth it. We just lost currency. Oh, this one's 2 exalt. Ooh. How about this one? 25 yen. Frostbite. Nah. I think it's not that. It's not that farmable. I don't know why this will cost 2 exalt. I think this isn't. Origin life, attacks, critical strike. Yeah, we just lost something. Just gonna put this one here and just probably we just sell it for 1.5. Nampak? Alright, so that's all. I'm just gonna go for dinner. But that wasn't really nice. Turns out it wasn't. It was just a waste. Alright, see you again next time.